for 16 years, and I'm here representing Lori Hershey.
Good morning, I'm Felita Tutt, Duval County Council PTA President.
Good morning, I'm Julia Menifee. I'm a CRT DEC data entry clerk at Rutledge Pearson Elementary School.
Good morning, my name is Derek. I do data entry at Chafee Trail Elementary.
Good morning, Mr. Pruitt. Welcome. I'm Jenny Bird. I'm representing School Board Member Scott Shine. I'm a retired Miami-Dade County Public Schools Administrator. Welcome.
Good morning. My name is Carrie Halligan, and I am an at-home mom that has 4 children in the Duval County school system, and I'm volunteer a lot.
Good morning, Mr. Pruitt. My name is Tara Harold Jackson. I'm an educator at Robert E. Lee High School, and I am also the SAC chair at Fort Caroline Middle School. And welcome.
Thank you.
Good morning, Ms. Pruitt. My name is LaTanya Mitchell. I'm a 4th grade teacher at Pinedale Elementary School.
Thank you.
So the questions will just come to the field.
Okay.
Who's got question number 1?
Question number 1, good morning.
Good morning.
Again, please describe why you have chosen and included the Duval County Public School District in your career plans. What aspects of our school district and our region have attracted you and brought you here today?
Well, good morning. I want to thank the Duval County school board members for inviting me here to interview for the superintendent position. And so, again, my name is Eric Pruitt. I come from Houston Independent School District, where I'm the area superintendent. And so this job, the current job that I'm in, has put me on the trajectory of wanting to become a superintendent. However, it didn't start in Houston. My professional career began in Chicago Public Schools as a 1st grade teacher, straight out of the Marines. So I feel really sorry for those 1st grade kids that got me straight out of the Marines. But I've always had a passion for education, and the way I look at it is I'm always looking for my next assignment based on this career goal. Throughout my career, I've had opportunities to work with really great people, and those people have put me in positions to serve kids. It started off as a 1st grade teacher, then led to becoming a principal in Chicago, and then deputy chief of schools in Chicago. And then I was asked and recruited to come to Houston about 4 years ago. And those opportunities, again, put me around really great people. I've had great teams, then we've had great success. And now I'm currently in my role as area superintendent, serving 34 underserved and underperforming schools in Houston ISD. And so what attracts me to Jacksonville is very similar to both Chicago and Houston. Not necessarily in size, it's a very large district, but the way I see the role of the superintendent is being an advocate. The most successful superintendents that I've worked with are people that have been able to reach out to the community, both parents, business, nonprofits, but also I've seen them be very effective with building really productive relationships. And those relationships don't necessarily mean that we're always going to agree, but it's always based on our foundation of keeping kids first. And so my trajectory to Jacksonville is the size is very similar to what I'm used to coming from Chicago and Houston. The challenges that you're experiencing, both financial and your upward trajectory around student performance, is something that I've experienced in my current district and my previous district. And I truly believe that I have a skill set around building really productive relationships with all stakeholders, with the goal of keeping kids at the forefront and getting results along the way.
Thank you so much.
Mr. Pruitt, what types of decisions or responsibilities do you delegate?
Okay.
Delegate to others to include employees or outsourcing, and how do you monitor or manage accountability for performance of those who are responsible?
So key to my leadership is that I believe in the people that I select to work with me, not necessarily for me. And so I think I do a very good job of hiring really smart people. And that's actually a really key component of my leadership. I need really smart people around me. And I was sharing yesterday with the board members is the team that I'm currently working with. We recently read a book called Multipliers. And the tenets of that book is that the leader doesn't necessarily have to be the smartest person in the room. But however, it's my job to make sure that everyone feels like they're the smartest person, but then also I'm working to help increase their intelligence around doing the work. And so the issue around delegation is my cabinet is going to be very key to propelling Duval County even further. And so what that means is I have to trust the people that are working with me and their areas of responsibility. And so the issue around delegation is if you are over HR, that is your responsibility, and I'll hold you accountable based on the metrics that we designate. And so it's an issue of how do we establish the metrics by which we're going to be judged on, and that goes across all departments, whether it's academics, IT, finance. We have to set up the parameters by which we measure our success and come back to those periodically, both in our cabinet meetings, but then have set intervals throughout the school year where we're evaluating how successful we are and what adjustments need to be made.
Mr. Pruitt, could you please give an example of how you developed a shared vision of a preferred future with the board, various stakeholders, and then how you communicated that shared vision? And then do you see your approach differing at all in Duval County?
And so, as I said previously, I'm currently the area superintendent of the Achieve 180 campuses. And so Achieve 180 is basically an area that is devoted to significantly improving our underserved and underperforming students. I was one of the architects of this strategy to significantly improve campuses back in January, and we actually implemented this strategy this year. And so part of this vision setting around improving schools was involving board members, talking to the community around where they see their schools in a year, 3 years, 5 years. And it's more so, in Florida terms, it's more so than moving a school from F to C. It's what's the goal from getting the school to F to A and having that be sustainable. And so the messaging part of that is involving all stakeholders in the process, identifying how we're going to tier support, not only for our lowest performing schools, but then our mid and high performing schools. Part of this strategy is not ignoring the remaining schools that are in our district, but identifying how we're going to continue to support all of our campuses to ensure that our lowest performers perform better and our higher performers perform even better throughout the school year. And so the messaging part is involving all stakeholders, being very transparent about the goals of an initiative or program. And again, the basis of these decisions, the communication is around what's best for kids and eventually what's best for the district. How that's applied in Jacksonville is we've had an upward trajectory with data. However, we still have some work to do. We have some financial challenges, which is going to require a plan of action, whether it be a 5-10-year plan. I was talking to the CFO yesterday, and I believe a best practice that we need to implement is we need about 3 months worth of reserves on hand moving forward. So that's going to equate to about $250 million that we're going to put a plan together to get that up to a point where the district is financially, fiscally responsible and stable. And then also, although we've had an upward trajectory with academics, are we as a community resigned to just having C schools? Once we get all of our schools to be a C or better, is that the goal, or is the goal to get all of our schools as an A? And then if we need, we also need to improve how literacy is being implemented throughout the board, K-12. We also need to look at how are our SPED students being serviced. Are students given opportunities to take AP? Are we setting kids up to take AP classes? Are kids being set up to take more advanced classes in high school? And we really need to look at how we're servicing our kids in the middle. We often in big districts like this, we focus in on elementary and then high school because we want them to graduate. But we often forget our kids in the middle. And so we really need to look at what we're doing and the programs that we're offering our kids in the middle that really sets them up for success in high school. And so I think that's what I bring. I think it equates to my experiences from Houston, and it'll easily transfer to Jacksonville.
Hello, Mr. Pruitt.
Good morning.
My question is, what has been the most difficult decision you had to make with a governing board? What was your role, the role of the board, and how did you handle the reaction to this decision?
And so back in Chicago, about 6 years ago, Chicago was experiencing very similar financial challenges as Jacksonville. And the decision was made to close 50 schools. That was really tough. The reasons behind it, and so it required us to, once the decision was made, engage the community in figuring out, because of our financial shortfalls, how we can best support these neighborhood schools that were basically are being dismantled due to these closures, but then supporting the students that are being moved to new schools. And so that decision was really tough. And work in Chicago, the district is mayoral controlled. And so it was really working with the mayor, the aldermen around identifying how by moving kids, what programs we can offer these schools that will be receiving these students, either it be make a school a STEM school, an IB school, magnet schools, to both attract new students to the school, but then further support kids that are being taken away from their neighborhoods. In Houston, again, we're dealing with the same challenges that you're dealing with. We're facing a $115 million budget deficit. And so the decision around where do the cuts come from, and minimizing the impact on schools and students as much as possible. And that's involved conversations with board members, conversations with the community, students, the central office around, if central office's purpose is truly to serve the needs of schools, we have to protect schools, and the cuts have to come from a different area.
Mr. Pruitt, my question is around funding. What roles have you previously played in lobbying with state legislators for helping get more funding for schools, but also reversing some of those unfunded mandates?
And so my role in Chicago was really working hand in hand with the aldermen, not necessarily personally with the mayor, but advocating for our schools around receiving more funding from the state in Illinois. In my role in Houston really revolves around communicating with board members around the impact that these cuts are having on our campuses, and how we can minimize those cuts around with teachers and school leaders, and then how we can further support our campuses. The superintendent in Houston is really more intimately involved with going downstate and advocating for the district, in addition to our intergovernmental affairs director in Houston.
Okay, Mr. Pruitt, how do we ensure that we are being fiscally responsible for our financial resources, and how do we communicate that to our board and community stakeholders?
I think the simplest answer is we can't spend more than we have. But then moving forward, again, having just 5% of reserves on hand, I think we can do better than that. Again, I believe that we need 3 months worth of reserves. If selected as the superintendent, that then means that going into the 18-19 school year, we're going to have to be much more fiscally conservative moving forward. Again, not spending more than we have. And some people will say doing more with less, but I think it's an issue of how can central office better support campuses with the resources that we have. I fundamentally believe that improving schools does not boil down to new initiatives, programs. It boils down to people. And based on my conversations, we have really good people in Duval County. And so it's an issue of how do we better support our principals and how do we support our teachers, the people who have feet on the ground, trying to execute the vision of the board is how we become better. Fiscally, again, being more conservative, looking at do we have at central office, is there duplicity at central office? And what that means for me is, do we have multiple people doing the same job? And is there a way to consolidate that? Not necessarily take jobs away from people, but then have the central office be more efficient around the tasks that are being done to support campuses.
Okay, Mr. Pruitt. What has been the most unpopular decision you have had to make, and how did you handle the reaction to this decision?
So whenever you, again, making decisions for what was best for kids, whenever you remove principals from a campus that may have been on a campus for a while, however, they've shown themselves not to be effective, is a really tough decision because they formed relationships with parents and students. However, if it's not yielding results as far as school performance and student performance, those decisions can be tough. But again, making decisions that are in the best interest of kids requires courage. And so those have been some of the toughest decisions, removing principals from campuses, but then also when dealing with financial challenges in districts, cutting resources away from campuses sometimes, or programs, or limiting the amount of resources schools receive has also been seen as a really big challenge.
Timing is good. Timing is very good.
Thank you, Mr. Pruitt. In light of the recent active shooter event in Parkland, Florida, and the legislature passing the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School Safety Act, what would be your vision and strategy to address the short-term and long-term vulnerability risks identified in the district?
I think relying on our police, our school district's police department chief, and identifying where our vulnerabilities are. And so I think it would require an assessment of all of our campuses that make us vulnerable to active shooters and intruders. I know in my current district, our operations officer has done a review of all of our schools and how can we limit access and restrict access to people that enter the building and ensure that we're able to have them check in and ensure that they don't gain access to our kids or staff without someone knowing on campus. I think that also, so it's going to be a partnership between our police force and then our operations department as far as, is there funding or is there opportunities for building, I think, vestibules where you enter a campus and you're limited and requiring badge access. So I think that it's going to require a systematic review of how we allow people to enter, how we badge people, how we document people in the building, and then what are the procedures for the district around ensuring that our school leaders, teachers, students know what to do when we have an active shooter or intruder or someone that's unwanted on campus. That way everyone's able to react in a very efficient way to keep everyone safe.
Good morning. My question is, some superintendents prefer teachers to follow provided lesson plans and curriculum guides and timelines so that they can ensure that all teachers across the county are on the same page. But other superintendents allow teachers to use the district-provided materials as a tool, but they allow more autonomy in lesson planning as long as all lessons are guided by the standards. So my question is, in your current position, what is your personal philosophy and leadership style with regard to how the provided curriculum is used? Do you prefer district-led timelines and curriculum guides, or do you allow standards-based lessons with autonomy that allows teachers to use the provided curriculum only as a tool?
And so my philosophy is that the district has to have a tool that measures student success periodically throughout the school year. And so interim assessments. And so based on those interim assessments gives us an idea of how well we've taught content. Whether or not the teacher is provided the tool and is required to do it or is given the autonomy, I don't think that's the question. The question is, how effective have we been teaching content? And if the data that we're receiving indicates that we aren't being effective, then it's up to the principal or the teacher's coach, supervisor, then to assist them with a better planning and better execution of lessons. And so I'm not avoiding your question. However, my preference isn't district-led or teacher autonomy. It should be based off of what our students are telling us through those interim assessments. And so if kids don't get content, that means the adults need to do a better job. And doing a better job either means better planning or better pedagogy. Or better relations with our students. And so I think that based on this district, as far as how we roll out curriculum, I think that it should be offered. And I think that our effective teachers should be given the opportunity to be autonomous around their planning. But then those teachers that need additional support should be required to follow a set plan with coaching and support, and again, tier support. And then as they show themselves to be more effective, then giving them the autonomy to then plan.
Mr. Pruitt, please describe your experience working with groups in an organization with varying interests and agendas. Describe how you were able to achieve consensus and a common vision for the organization with these different groups.
I'm sorry, could you read that one more time?
Please describe your experience working with groups in an organization with varying interests and agendas. Describe how you were able to achieve consensus and a common vision for the organization with these different groups.
And so in my experience, both in Chicago and now in Houston, I've had opportunities to work with universities, business partners, nonprofits. Then it's not necessarily that they have different agendas. However, I think what's key as a superintendent is that we hold our priorities at the top of our list. And so when we are partnering and meeting with our business partners, our nonprofits, our universities, and they want to offer us either money or services, what we have to do as a district and what I would have to do as a superintendent is based on the money that you're offering or services, is that aligned with our priorities? And if it's not aligned with our priorities, I'm courageous enough to say no. However, this is how, if you want to partner with us, these are our priorities, and this is how you can support our kids teachers, and school leaders around partnering with this district.
So we would like to hear about your most demanding public presence experience. And what was your role? What was the role of the school board, and how did you handle that?
So I'm gonna go back to the closure of the 50 schools. And so that was actually a year-long process that required public meetings, me sitting on a stage or sitting on a stage or in a church or in a community center and having people come up and just voice their frustrations about the process, about the lack of communication, the lack of transparency that they were feeling, and then them holding me accountable for these decisions that administration had made. Again, with Chicago being mayoral controlled, the board members did attend, but however, it was my responsibility to facilitate those meetings and listen and then react. And these were public meetings that were held throughout the school year that eventually led to the closures of those schools.
Good morning again, Mr. Pruitt.
Good morning.
Give us an example where you have faced an authentic crisis within an organization, and let us know what happened, your role in handling it, the results, and most importantly, key things that you learned from this experience.
And so Hurricane Harvey has been coming from the Midwest. I didn't really understand the power of water until going to Houston. And so Harvey was by most accounts for me, the biggest challenge that I've personally have had to deal with. The impact that it had on our kids, forcing families to be homeless, relocating those families was really tough. Having kids be relocated miles away from their homes, their schools, having to enroll them in new schools and come up with a plan by most accounts, people were telling us that we wouldn't be able to open our school year until November, maybe December. But being able to have the central office team mobilize and identify what schools needed to be shut down, available buildings that we could then repurpose and move students to, and our administrators to, getting resources to our families and students, providing social and emotional support, social services support to our families and students. That all happened in a very short amount of time. And so that required the team that I'm part of, based on if you were flooded in or not, having conference calls all times of the day, but then mobilizing the principals that we're working with, the central office staff, facilities, food, operations around how we can best support our kids and their families. That Harvey was a great learning experience for me as far as the power of having a really good team around you and having a plan in the time of crisis. And I'm really happy to say that despite that crisis, school being delayed 2 weeks, many of our schools I had 2 schools that were relocated to brand new locations. Some of my schools, versus being delayed 2 weeks, they were delayed 3 weeks. Despite all those challenges, our students, our teachers, our principals experience, the schools that I support have experienced some of the most dramatic gains for our kids in 5th and 8th grade. In Texas, our 5th and 8th grade students get an opportunity to take the test a few times. And so we've just had our first administration about a month ago, and we got our results back, and we're showing some of the most significant gains for our underserved and underperforming school. But that's a testament to the people that I put around me and that our superintendent put around her.
right. How do you establish a team and mobilize team members to achieve goals? Give an example of successful project resulting from teamwork.
And so I had the opportunity with the current Achieve 180 strategy that I'm implementing to identify my own team members. And the requirements were they had to have turnaround experience where they had a low performing school and significantly improved student outcomes and campus outcomes. But then, so once I got that, and then again, they had to be smart. Had to be really, really smart around the work and be willing to challenge me around, strategy, around initiatives that I want to that I want to push out to our principals and schools. And so that's resulted in, and the team was formed, us being able to mobilize really quickly to address the needs because of Harvey, but then also us coming together and establishing with these underserved and underperforming schools, what are our realistic goals? And then so the first conversation revolved around, why are we using the word realistic? What's the goal for our kids? If these were your personal students, your personal children at these schools, we wouldn't use the word realistic. We would use, what is the goal for performance for these children? And so that led to us establishing performance goals for the area and then for each individual campus. And then it revolved around, okay, what is our strategy of support for principals and for teachers? Very important to me is receiving ongoing and continuous feedback. And so these beginning conversations at the beginning of the school year resulted in me forming a principal advisory group, where the principal advisory group comes together. Again, we do a book study, and we just recently read Shifting the Monkey. And so, real quickly, as far as with Shifting the Monkey, everyone has responsibilities, and it's up to the leader to identify not allowing people to give you their responsibility, hence shifting the monkey. And so with the principal advisory group, that allowed us to get feedback on our strategy around support, but then also principals were on the forefront of designing PD for the school, for other principals and teachers throughout the school year. That resulted in monthly PD for principals, and then designing in partnership with our curriculum team, professional development for all of our content teachers and grade level teachers in 3rd through 12th grade. So what that meant was, if you're a algebra teacher, then we're going to bring all of our algebra teachers together and provide professional development around what are the most difficult standards that are coming up. We're going to help you plan, and then we're going to practice teaching that standard for you. That way you have an idea of how to approach teaching. And so working with a really smart team, a really strategic team, is very important to me, because it allows us to bounce ideas off of one another. And then it's also a measure of accountability around, are we holding true to our goals and our mission to improve all of our schools?
Okay, we have a high and low socioeconomic students. How would you ensure that every student, regardless of socioeconomic status, receives equal access and resources to ensure high achievement? Please give examples of use of facilities, curriculum design, and community input to achieve equal access.
And so ensuring equal access might be the wrong approach, because with our low performing students, mid, high performing, if we give equal access or equal resources, it's not going to yield the results that we want. And so I really want to, I would be a proponent of approaching it as far as equity. With equity, it allows us to tier the type of support that our students need. If they are gifted, if they are receiving special ed resources, if they're not receiving special ed resources, if they're over age. We can't apply the same we can apply the same supports based on the different needs that our students present when they come to us. And so I would approach it from an equity decision-making standpoint. And again, this goes back to us being fiscally responsible and not spending money that we don't have. If Eric is a really high performer, Eric may not necessarily need interventions. However, if Eric is a year behind or 2 years behind, or if Eric is over age, Eric might need a tutor. Eric might need interventions versus an Eric that is, has been doing okay, but we can push him to be a little bit better. Eric should be in an AP course. Again, that requires a different type of support for students that show us different needs. And so I would approach it from an equity-based standpoint of applying our resources and support to our students. And then that also applies not only to individual students at a school, but then equity-based decision-making around how we're supplying support to our campuses.
Thank you, Mr. Pruitt. Is there anything else you would like to share with us to support your candidacy?
Sure. So again, I'm originally from Indianapolis, Indiana, born and raised. I think I represent some of the students that you currently have, where college right out of high school is not the right choice. And so straight out of college, I enlisted in the Marine Corps, and I made my mom mad. I waited till I was 17 in the middle of my senior year. I waited until I turned 18 in the middle of my senior year and signed up for the Marine Corps. Then I took the recruiter to her to tell her what I did. It didn't go over very well. However, I think that my experiences, I'm those students that, again, college wasn't necessarily the right choice after high school. And so I think that based on my experiences in Chicago and Houston, it's revolved around giving our kids options after school, whether that be college, whether that be a trade school, whether that be entering the workforce or going into the military. And so that requires us to identify what are we doing in pre-K that sets our kids up for success by the time they graduate in 12th grade. And so looking at, again, our college prep courses, I think that we need to further develop our CTE programs in the district. And we've done a really good job in Houston around establishing really robust CTE programs that put our kids on the path of entering the workforce, or go ahead and go to college and then entering the workforce. So I think it has to be a balanced approach around, again, equity-based decision-making. All of our kids shouldn't be required to go to college. However, all of our kids should be required to be productive citizens for Jacksonville and in the United States.
Dr. Pruitt, your answers were very succinct, and we actually have a few minutes left. Do you have any questions that you would like to ask the committee?
I do.
So once you ask the question, whoever wants to respond, just grab a mic.
And so for my parents in the room, what does or should parent engagement look like in Duval County?
I think just to be partnered with, and I know especially when it comes to, I think you mentioned some principal changes that were difficult decisions for you, and that definitely bears out with parents. And we definitely want to respect, HR processes and whatnot, but it is important to partner, and especially if nothing else, to make sure we have a shared vision or shared perspective on the performance. Because sometimes metrics can be misleading. You have the right person going about the right approach, but just not hitting the right metric and to give them support. So I think that's probably the key piece of friction I've seen, but I'll let others speak for themselves.
Yeah.
Oh, sure.
There's one thing that I would like to see or have considered for the parents. What we've experienced in our community is that a lot of the parents are illiterate. The the homework that's prepared and go home with the children, the parents have no clue as to what's going on in the school system. So therefore, you see the failed PTA attendances, you see the failed students, and you see the angry parents. So we have in our community developed a 2-generational model where we send residents that are available that have been trained to go inside the school, help the troubled students, therefore go home and talk to the parents and share that learned experience as to what's going on. I don't know how that can be developed in the school board system, but I do think something needs to be considered when you're looking at the student and taking it home to the parent, and the parent not understanding what's going on in the school system.
I would just like to say from my standpoint, as far as what I imagine for parent involvement in Duval County, is knowing that parent input is needed and welcome. And that to me starts at the school level, as far as the parent being welcome to come to meetings and to be very involved. And it's not the case everywhere, but where it is the case, it's an amazing thing.
Do we probably have time for one more question?
One more question. So for the community, in general, what are your points of pride concerning Duval County?
Points of pride.
You did say, if I'm not mistaken, you said points of pride?
Yes. What are you most proud of about Duval County?
Okay, now the good part about it is, since I'm answering this, I'm not from Duval County. I'm actually from Connecticut, but I've been here for 22 years. I agree that a lot of our parents aren't being involved or being accepted. And my son's gone. He graduated in 2013. But if I work at a school, I work directly with the parents, and it's a two-way street. We try to offer them, they try to get to us. But my pride is, as the parent over here just said, there are schools that make you feel as though you are part of that immediate family. You walk in there and that's the way it is. And then we have schools that they accept you, don't get me wrong, but it's not that home feeling. And if the parent isn't feeling at home, we get a lot of turnaround from the parents that want to take their kids to other schools. I'm prideful because there is still maybe 75% of us that want to make sure that you're at home and you feel at home. That's Duval County to me. I'm not from here, so I'm not being, this is my home. And I'm saying that for the last 20 years, I felt like Duval County Public Schools makes it feel as we're home. And if we can get that as a district-wide, if we get it coming down from the district, I know, I'm sorry. If I can get it coming down from the district as well as from the school and we meet, then everybody will be happy.
All right, I'd like to give another point of pride. I have got to say that I have kids who attended a school that was a D-rated school, that the teachers and the staff are absolutely wonderful. So to me, throughout our time, I've got kids in elementary up to high school, and I've got one who's gifted, and I have two that have learning disabilities. And I find that when we all get together, like everyone, their viewpoint is like they want to do what's best for the child. That's a huge advantage here.
I think another point of pride for me is that we're all very committed to a positive outcome. At different areas in the county, in the district, you have an option to perhaps move to a different district that's maybe more favorable socioeconomics. And I think, from the teachers, from the staff, from the parents, we're all very committed to making this successful. And, it's not easy, but I think I'm proud that as we look around the room, everybody here is here for a reason. It's because they believe in public education. They believe in being successful in Duval County. So I think there'll be a lot there for you to build on.
So thank you, everyone. Really enjoyed answering your questions and meeting all of you.
Thank you, Dr. Pruitt. Your next meeting is across the hall, but you've got about probably 10, 15 before it starts, so you got 15 minutes free.
Thank you.
Committee, I'm sure this is still streaming, so just go ahead and make your notes, and we will start that next candidate at, what time is it?